Es ist eine ruhige Nacht in einem wohlhabenden Viertel von Austin. Es ist der 1. März 2018. Die Straßen sind ruhig, gesäumt von stattlichen Häusern, die im Mondlicht leuchten. Eines dieser Häuser gehört Ted und Corey Shaughnessy, Juwelieren, die nicht nur für ihren erlesenen Geschmack, sondern auch für ihr großzügiges Herz bekannt sind. Sie genießen ein Leben in Wohlstand und Erfolg, ohne zu wissen, dass dieser friedliche Abend bald einem unvorstellbaren Chaos weichen wird. Ted und Corey fertigten nicht nur edlen Schmuck, sondern führten auch ein Leben voller Erfolg. Ihr Geschäft war ein lokaler Schatz, ein Ort, an dem schillernde Edelsteine die Träume derer trafen, die durch seine Türen kamen. Als prominente Persönlichkeiten in ihrer Gemeinde schienen ihre Leben perfekt zu sein. Auftritt: Nick Shaughnessy, der einzige Sohn des Paares, der als Kleinkind aus Russland adoptiert wurde. Nick wuchs im Luxus auf, doch als er älter wurde, nahm sein Leben eine andere Richtung. Er lernte Jackie Edison kennen, eine wichtige Figur in seinem Leben, und bald wurde sie seine Frau. Ihre Verbindung wurde jedoch vor Ted und Corey geheim gehalten, was das erste von vielen Geheimnissen war, die mit der Zeit ans Licht kommen sollten. Die Bühne ist aufgebaut, die Schauspieler vorgestellt, und in der Nacht des 1. März 2018 würden sich Ereignisse ereignen, die niemand in den ruhigen Straßen von Austin vorhersehen konnte. Ted und Corey Shaughnessy waren nicht nur Geschäftspartner, sie waren in jeder Hinsicht ein Team. Sie eröffneten Gallerie Jewelers in Austin, ein Ort, der schnell mehr als nur ein Geschäft wurde. Es war ein lokaler Treffpunkt, an dem sich jeder willkommen fühlte. Teds Charme und Corys scharfes Auge für Design machten sie zu angesehenen Persönlichkeiten in ihrer Gemeinde. Sie waren stolz auf ihre Arbeit und verbrachten oft bis spät in die Nacht damit, darüber zu diskutieren, wie sie ihre Kollektionen erweitern oder das Kundenerlebnis verbessern könnten. From a young age, their adopted son Nick showed an interest in the glittering world of jewelry. He was often seen at the store after school, marveling at the gemstones and occasionally helping out with small tasks. However, as he entered his teenage years, his fascination began to wane. He developed other interests, ones that took him away from the family business, and als Nick das College-Alter erreichte, war die Bindung, die er einst zu seinen Eltern hatte, sichtlich brüchig geworden. Gespräche über die Zukunft des Familienunternehmens, einst aufregend, wurden zu Spannungsquellen. Nick äußerte den Wunsch, seinen eigenen Weg zu gehen, der deutlich von den Erwartungen seiner Eltern abwich. Diese wachsende Unabhängigkeit war geprägt von geheimen Entscheidungen, wie seiner Heirat mit Jackie, die er vor seinen Eltern verbarg, aus Angst vor ihrer Missbilligung oder Enttäuschung. As 2018 began, the distance between Nick and his parents grew. Ted and Corey remained in Austin, but Nick and Jackie navigated life in College Station, facing the realities of financial struggles that were unknown to Ted and Corey. The contrast in their lifestyles created an undercurrent of unease, setting the stage for events that would soon shock their community. By the summer of 2017, despite their young age, Nick and Jackie decided to commit to each other fully. They married in a quiet ceremony. No family, no celebrations, just the two of them, sealing their vows in secret. This decision to marry without telling his parents was the first of many secrets Nick would keep from Ted and Corey. He feared their reaction, knowing well that they had envisioned a different path for him, one more aligned with the family business and its legacy. Einklang mit dem Familienunternehmen und seinem Erbe stand. After the wedding, the couple moved to College Station, where life took a more challenging turn. Jackie began her studies at Texas A&M University, diving into her coursework with enthusiasm. Meanwhile, Nick tried to find his footing, far removed from the influence of his parents and the jewelry store that had been a centerpiece of his life. Money was tight. The freedom they thought they would find in College Station came with strings attached: bills, rent, and the daily grind of making ends meet without financial help from their families. Hier über die Runden zu kommen. On the evening of March 1st, 2018, Ted and Corey wrapped up another successful day at their jewelry store, sharing dinner and discussing the day's events. Their home was filled with warmth and the soft sounds of classical music, a favorite of Corey's, playing in the background, einer von Corey's Lieblingsmusiken. As they relaxed into the evening, Ted reviewed some designs for new jewelry pieces, his sketches spreading across the dining table. Corey, ever the meticulous planner, organized paperwork and client files, ensuring everything was set for the next business day. Their conversation was light, punctuated by laughter and shared plans for an upcoming vacation, a needed break they both looked forward to.
Urlaub aus. Eine notwendige Pause, auf die sie sich beide freuten.
Around 8 p.m., Ted received a phone call from a longtime client requesting a custom piece.
They discussed ideas and budgets, with Ted reassuring the client that he would personally handle the design. Corey listened in, occasionally chiming in with suggestions, showcasing their seamless partnership.
Later, as the night deepened, the couple settled in their living room. Ted with a glass of wine, and Corey with her knitting, a hobby that helped her unwind. They talked about Nick, expressing a mix of concern and hope for his new life in College Station. Despite the distance, they tried to stay connected, supporting him as best they could from afar. So gut zu unterstützen, wie sie konnten. The last check of the night involved Ted securing their home, checking the locks, and glancing through the windows, a routine that brought him peace of mind. They retired to bed by 10 p.m. The house was quiet, the night still. Just after 4:30 a.m. on March 2, 2018, the quiet of the Shaughnessy home was abruptly shattered. The family dogs, normally calm, began barking fiercely, alerting Ted and Corey to something amiss. The sudden noise ripped through the silence of the night, dragging Ted from sleep into a state of high alert. Without hesitation, Ted reached for the .45 caliber handgun he kept in the nightstand, a precaution born from his role as a jeweler, a job that, while beautiful, could sometimes attract the wrong kind of attention. Heart pounding, he moved swiftly and silently from the safety of his bedroom, intent on confronting whatever threat lay outside. Bedrohung, die draußen lauerte, entgegenzutreten. Als den Flur betrat, war es sehr dunkel, aber hatte jahrelang jede Ecke seines Hauses gekannt und sich von ihm leiten lassen. Das Bellen wurde lauter und hallte durch die Flure, ein krasser Soundtrack zu dem sich entfaltenden Drama. Ted ging auf die Quelle des Lärms zu, die Waffe fest in der Hand, seine Sinne geschärft durch das Adrenalin, das durch seine Adern strömte. Each step brought him closer to the living room. As he rounded the corner, it was then that the first gunshot rang out, a loud, jarring sound that splintered the night. Ted had only moments to react, but before he could raise his weapon or retreat, more shots started following, rapid and ruthless.
Unbarmherzig. In den frostigen frühen Morgenstunden des 2. März 2018 schreckte Corey Shaughnessy hoch, als Schüsse durch ihr Haus hallten. Die anfängliche Verwirrung wich schnell dem Schrecken, als sie die Geräusche einer Schießerei erkannte. Corey handelte instinktiv und eilte zum Nachttisch, wo sie ihren Revolver .357 aufbewahrte.
With her heart racing, Corey left the relative safety of their bedroom to find Ted. As she moved cautiously through the house, the stark realization that the gunfire was not just a threat but a reality hit her hard. Each step was heavier than the last, her breath sharp in the quiet between gunshots. As she rounded a corner, Corey saw shadows moving, and without hesitating, she fired her revolver towards the figures. The intruders fired back, bullets whizzing past her. Realizing she was outgunned and her ammunition nearly spent, Corey made the split-second decision to retreat. She dashed to a nearby closet, the safest place she could think of, and shut herself in. Trembling, Corey dialed 911. Her voice was a whisper, strained with fear as she urgently whispered her address to the dispatcher. "We need help, now!" As she spoke, the reality of the situation sank in. Ted had not followed her, and the silence that had fallen over the house suggested the worst.
Die Stille, die sich über das Haus gelegt hatte, ließ das Schlimmste vermuten.
Every minute waiting for the police felt like an eternity, filled with dread and the agonizing possibility of loss. The weight of the night's events bore down on her as she awaited the sirens, hoping for rescue but fearing what they might find.
Davor, was sie finden könnten.
As dawn approached on March 2, 2018, the first responders arrived at the Shaughnessy home in Austin, Texas. The quiet of the morning was broken by the flashing lights and urgent footsteps of the police as they entered the residence. Inside, they found a scene of violence that had occurred just moments earlier.
Ereignet hatte.
Ted Shaughnessy lay motionless, dead near the living room, his life tragically cut short. He was shot 4 times. Nearby, the family's loyal dog, Bart, was also found deceased, a silent victim in the chaos. The house, once a symbol of the Shaughnessy's success and happiness, was now a disarray of broken glass, scattered furniture, and bullet casings, evidence of the intense exchange of gunfire.
Ein Beweis für den heftigen Schusswechsel.
Officers moved carefully through the home, documenting every detail. They noted the trajectory of bullets and collected every shell casing, which would later be crucial for the forensic analysis. The open window in Nick's old room drew their attention. It seemed to be the likely point of entry for the intruders, adding another piece to the puzzle of that night's events.
und fügte dem Puzzle der Ereignisse dieser Nacht ein weiteres Stück hinzu.
As the crime scene team worked, Corey Shaughnessy was found in a closet, shaken but unharmed physically. Her relief at seeing the officers was palpable, yet overshadowed by the grief that was beginning to set in as the reality of her husband's fate became clear. The police gently escorted her outside, where she could be attended to while they secured the scene.
Wo sie sich sie kümmern konnte, während sie den Tatort sicherten.
Als die Sonne aufging und Licht auf die tragische Szene warf, stellte sich die Frage, wer könnte das getan haben und warum? In the wake of the shocking events of March 2nd, 2018, Austin police quickly launched a full-scale investigation. Initially, detectives considered the possibility of a robbery gone wrong, given the disarray found throughout the Shaughnessy home. The theory seemed plausible. A wealthy family, a large home filled with valuables, targets for opportunistic criminals.
Kriminelle. Die Details am Tatort passten jedoch nicht ganz zum üblichen Muster eines Einbruchs. Insbesondere wertvolle Gegenstände wie Schmuck und Elektronik blieben unberührt. Dieser ungewöhnliche Hinweis verwirrte die Ermittler und veranlasste sie, die Umstände des Vorfalls genauer zu untersuchen.
As the investigation progressed, attention shifted to an open window in what used to be Nick's bedroom. This window, found ajar with signs of being tampered with, suggested a planned entry point rather than a forced break-in. This discovery was critical, as it hinted at someone familiar with the house, someone who knew exactly how to enter without causing much disturbance.
Und genau wusste, wie ohne große Störung eindringen konnte.
Further compounding the mystery was the finding of an empty gun box in the same room. The box, which had previously held a .45 caliber handgun similar to the one Ted often carried, was now conspicuously empty. This detail was particularly alarming, as it raised the possibility that the crime involved more than just unauthorized entry. It spoke of intentions far more sinister.
Es zeugte von weitaus finstereren Absichten.
These findings shifted the narrative from a simple robbery to something more personal and premeditated. The police began to consider other motives, and to question whether someone close to the family could be involved. The open window and the empty gun box were not just clues. They were silent testimonies to a deeper plot, one that the detectives were just beginning to unravel.
Tieferen Verschwörung, die die Ermittler gerade erst aufzudecken begannen.
As the investigation deepened in the days following March 2nd, 2018, the focus began to shift in an unexpected direction. Detectives, digging through the layers of evidence, stumbled upon a clue that would pivot their investigation dramatically.
In Nick and Jackie's College Station apartment, investigators found pieces of torn paper that, when pieced together, revealed a hand-drawn diagram of the Shaughnessy home. This diagram included notations about entry points and room layouts, an unsettling discovery that suggested meticulous planning. Planung schließen ließ.
The presence of such a diagram raised immediate red flags for the police. It hinted at a deep familiarity with the home's layout and suggested premeditation. The question now was not just who could have done this, but why Nick, the Shaughnessy's own son, would have such a detailed layout of his parents' house, seemingly marked for intrusion.
Das Objekt markiert war.
Adding to the suspicion was surveillance footage from Nick and Jackie's apartment complex. The footage, taken in the days before the murder, showed unusual activity. Individuals unfamiliar to the complex were seen visiting Nick and Jackie's apartment, their visits marked by quick, secretive exchanges. These visitors did not match the profiles of typical guests, friends or classmates, raising more questions about their identities and purposes.
Kameraden, was weitere Fragen zu ihrer Identität und ihren Absichten aufwirft.
The combination of the house diagram and the suspicious surveillance footage directed the investigators' attention firmly towards Nick. It was a turn in the investigation that no one, least of all Corey, could have anticipated. The idea that the danger to Ted and Corey might have come from within their own family was chilling. As detectives delved deeper, the case against Nick began to crystallize, shifting from a tragic incident to a possible orchestrated attack.
Vorfall zu einem möglicherweise inszenierten Angriff.
In the wake of the March 2nd, 2018, murder, as the investigation focused increasingly on Nick Shaughnessy and his wife Jackie Edison, a pivotal discovery came from the couple's technological footprint. Prior to police interrogation, both Nick and Jackie had factory reset their phones, an act that initially seemed like a significant hurdle for the investigators.
Ist als große Hürde erschienen.
Doch im digitalen Zeitalter gibt es kaum etwas, das man nicht tun kann. Die Ermittler griffen auf die iCloud-Backups des Paares zurück und fanden damit wichtige Beweise. Trotz der Bemühungen von Nick und Jackie, ihre Spuren zu verwischen, blieben ihre Textnachrichten, Fotos und App-Daten in der Cloud erhalten,
und waren mit den entsprechenden Haftbefehlen für die Strafverfolgungsbehörden zugänglich.
Among the restored data were several text messages that cast a shadow over Nick's innocence. One message in particular stood out, a note from Nick to an unidentified contact that read simply, $50,000 for, followed by a series of dots. These few words, though cryptic, suggested a transaction tied to something sinister. The message didn't specify the nature of the payment, but given the timing and context uncovered in other communications,
Investigators believed it was linked to the murder plan. Als die in anderen Nachrichten aufgedeckt wurden, glaubten die Ermittler, dass sie mit dem Mordplan in Verbindung stand.
This piece of evidence was crucial. It not only indicated Nick's possible involvement in a serious criminal activity, but also showed his intent to procure services or actions for which someone might require a large sum of money, presumably not for lawful purposes.
Further scrutiny of the backups revealed more incriminating exchanges that detailed timings, discussions about his parents' daily routines, and even discontent with his current life situation, painting a picture of a son plotting against his own family. Dies zeichnete das Bild eines Sohnes, der gegen seine eigene Familie intrigiert.
As the investigation into the tragic events of March 2nd, 2018 unfolded, key interrogations took place that would piece together the sinister plot against Ted and Corey Shaughnessy. When Corey was brought in for questioning, she was visibly shaken but composed. Throughout her interrogation, she consistently denied any involvement in the crime against her husband. Her shock and disbelief were palpable as she struggled to grasp the reality that her own son might be behind such a heinous act. Despite the mounting evidence against Nick, Corey cooperated fully with the police, her demeanor and responses sharply contrasting with the accusations facing her son. She expressed a desperate hope that there was some mistake, that Nick could not be involved.
Einen Fehler handelte und Nick nicht beteiligt sein konnte.
Spencer, who had been one of Nick's closest friends, faced serious allegations after Nick tried to pin the blame on him. During his interrogation, Spencer was initially shocked to learn of the accusations. He provided a solid alibi for the night of the murder, confirmed by others, which quickly cleared him of any direct involvement. Spencer discussed his financial struggles, revealing how Nick knew of his desperate situation and suggesting that Nick exploited this knowledge to make him a scapegoat. Betrayal colored his recounting of their friendship, painting a picture of a friendship marred by manipulation.
Zu machen. Seine Schilderung ihrer Freundschaft war geprägt von Verrat und zeichnete das Bild einer Freundschaft, die von Manipulation getrübt war.
Nick's own interrogation was a study in defensiveness. He was evasive, often contradicting himself, and attempted to deflect blame at every turn. When asked about Spencer, Nick derisively commented on his financial woes, implying that Spencer's jealousy and need for money were motives for him to commit the murder. These remarks were intended to divert attention from himself, but they only served to highlight his desperation and willingness to betray close relationships to save himself.
Zu verraten, sich selbst zu retten.
Jackie initially stood by Nick, corroborating his alibi and attempting to present a united front. However, as the interrogation progressed and the evidence began to stack up, her resolve crumbled. Under intense pressure, Jackie's narrative began to falter. She contradicted earlier statements and eventually began to disclose more about their dire financial situation. Discussions about the life insurance on Ted Shaughnessy came to light, revealing conversations
where Nick had expressed frustration about his financial dependence on his parents and his eagerness to access his inheritance. Zum Ausdruck gebracht hatte.
As the investigation into the murder of Ted Shaughnessy progressed, several of Nick's friends came forward, each adding a crucial piece to the emerging puzzle. Their testimonies corroborated the suspicions surrounding the use of an old window, a window Nick had used in his youth to sneak in and out of the house unnoticed. These friends also shared troubling conversations they had with Nick, in which he expressed a desire to find a quick solution to his mounting financial pressures. These discussions often veered into dark territories, hinting at drastic measures Nick considered to resolve his financial woes.
Oft in düstere Gefilde und deuteten an, dass Nick drastische Maßnahmen erwog, seine finanziellen Probleme zu lösen.
The case reached a turning point when Jackie Edison, under the weight of irrefutable evidence, finally broke her silence about the depth of their financial troubles and the desperate plans Nick had set into motion. In an interrogation session, Jackie provided a detailed account of how Nick had orchestrated a plan to eliminate his parents. She revealed that Nick had sought out and hired individuals willing to commit the murder, explaining that the motive was tied to the substantial life insurance policies on his parents. Jackie confessed that they had discussed using the life insurance payout to stabilize their financial situation
and to fund a new start away from the shadows of debt and dependency. Finanzieren.
The courtroom was tense as the trial of Nick Shaughnessy began in late 2018. Each day, the gallery was packed with journalists, family members, and a community seeking answers. The prosecution laid out a compelling narrative,
Presenting the evidence gathered, the damning text messages, Jackie's confession, and testimonies from friends and acquaintances that painted Nick as a mastermind behind his father's murder.
Freunden und Bekannten, die Nick als Drahtzieher hinter dem Mord an seinem Vater darstellten. Nick's defense team argued that the evidence was circumstantial and tried to cast doubt on the reliability of the testimonies, especially focusing on Jackie's statements, which they claimed were coerced under pressure. They portrayed Nick as a troubled young man, but not a murderer. Mit Problemen da, aber nicht als Mörder. As the trial progressed, emotions ran high. Corey Shaughnessy, surrounded by friends and family, attended every day, her presence a silent testament to her anguish and search for justice. When the verdict was finally delivered, the courtroom held its breath. Nick was found guilty of orchestrating the murder of his father. The verdict came after hours of deliberation, reflecting the jury's careful consideration of the extensive evidence laid before them.
Umfangreichen Beweise wieder, die ihnen vorgelegt wurden.
Nick's sentencing followed shortly after the verdict. He received a lengthy prison term, effectively a 35-year sentence, reflecting the gravity of his crime. Jackie, having cooperated with the investigation and provided key testimonies, was put on probation and house arrest for 10 years. The reactions in the courtroom were mixed. Relief and sorrow filled Corey's eyes. Relief that justice was served, but profound sorrow over the loss of her husband and the unimaginable betrayal by her son. Friends and family members were seen comforting each other, the community still grappling with the shock of how deeply greed had fractured a family.
Die Gier eine Familie zerrissen hatte.